If a woman ever shares this with you, your stomach tightens and you don't know why. Because the moment she said it, the ground quietly shifted beneath your feet. I'm speaking to you as a psychologist, and as a woman who has listened to thousands of private confessions men never hear about. There is a specific kind of sharing that isn't casual, isn't flirty, and isn't accidental. It doesn't sound romantic on the surface. In fact, it often arrives wrapped in vulnerability, not desire. And when it happens, most men misunderstand it, or worse, dismiss it, because they're listening with logic instead of attunement. Here's the truth you were never taught. Women don't fall in love by being impressed. They fall in love by feeling emotionally safe while seen. And the clearest signal of that safety is not physical closeness or playful banter. It's disclosure. Not surface disclosure, but identity-level disclosure. When she shares a fear, she rarely admits. When she reveals a past moment, she still carries quietly. When she tells you something that could change how you see her, and she doesn't rush to justify it, that's not oversharing. That is attachment forming in real time. In clinical psychology, we call this selective vulnerability. It's when someone chooses a specific person to hold an unpolished truth. Not everyone gets access to that. Friends may know stories, family may know facts, but selective vulnerability is different. It's the moment she allows you into the private room where her emotional decisions are made. Men often miss this because they're scanning for signals they were trained to value: desire, availability, validation. But love doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It whispers with trust. Here's what's happening in her nervous system when she does this. She is testing emotional resonance, not your solutions. She's asking, without asking, if I show you who I really am, will you stay regulated? Will you stay present? Will you respect me more, not less? That question matters more than attraction, because attraction can be intense and temporary. Safety is durable. And here's the uncomfortable part. The moment she shares this, she has already crossed a threshold internally. She has emotionally pre-invested. She's already imagined you as someone who could understand her without controlling her, see her without consuming her. That's not a crush. That's attachment beginning. This is why the wrong response can quietly end everything. If you minimize it, if you joke, if you rush to fix, if you turn it into a performance of strength, her nervous system records that as unsafe. Not malicious, just incompatible. Strong men think strength is proving capability. Emotionally grounded men understand strength is tolerance, your ability to sit with complexity without panicking or posturing. I want you to hear this clearly. When she shares that thing, the insecurity, the contradiction, the unresolved grief, she is not asking you to carry it. She is asking if you can hold space for it, and holding space is not passive. It is an active decision to stay open without control. This is the first place most men lose her without realizing they ever had her, because love doesn't leave loudly. It withdraws quietly when it doesn't feel met. If this resonates uncomfortably, that's a good sign. It means you're listening past the surface, and that's where real connection actually begins. Now here's where most men misread the moment entirely. They assume that because she shared something intimate, the next move is escalation. More intensity, more pursuit, more presence. But emotionally, that's not what deepens the bond. What deepens it is how you regulate yourself after the share. When a woman opens up at this level, her subconscious is watching for one thing: consistency between your internal state and your external behavior. She is tracking microsignals: your breathing, your tone, your pacing, your ability to stay grounded. This isn't manipulation, it's biology. Her nervous system is scanning for coherence. If you become overly eager, you signal need. If you withdraw emotionally, you signal disinterest. If you intellectualize, you signal distance. But if you remain steady, curious without intrusion, warm without urgency, you signal safety. And safety is the accelerator of female attachment. This is where male conditioning gets in the way. Men are taught that value is demonstrated by action, but in moments like this, action can feel invasive. What she needs is emotional permission, not pressure. The paradox is that doing less, but being more present, creates more pull. Psychologically, when she shares something meaningful and you respond with calm validation, her brain releases oxytocin while staying regulated. That combination wires trust without dependency. And trust, not excitement, is what turns affection into love over time. Notice something important here. She didn't share this because she wants you to change her feelings. She shared it because her feelings have already changed. She's trying to see if reality matches the internal image she's forming of you. This is why your response matters more than your intentions. Many men think attraction is built by adding value. In truth, attraction stabilizes when value is experienced as reliable. Reliability doesn't mean predictability, it means emotional steadiness. You don't spike high and disappear. You don't lean in and then pull away to regain control. You stay congruent. Here's a subtle truth few men hear. Women don't fear being hurt as much as they fear being misjudged. When she shares something real, she is risking being reduced, seen as too much, too complicated, or less desirable. If you don't reduce her, if you don't reframe her vulnerability as weakness, something locks in emotionally. That lock-in doesn't feel dramatic to her. It feels quiet, familiar, almost boring in a good way. And that's when men get confused because the chase energy shifts. The tension changes. She's not trying to impress anymore. She's assessing integration, whether you can be part of her life without destabilizing it. If you understand this, you stop performing. You stop chasing reactions. You stop trying to control outcomes. You start leading emotionally by being centered. And centered men don't rush intimacy. They allow it to grow. This is why the men who create the deepest bonds aren't the loudest or flashiest. They're the ones who can sit in emotional gravity without flinching. They don't hijack the moment. They don't disappear from it either. They stay human. And when a woman experiences that after sharing something that matters, her internal narrative changes. She stops wondering if you understand her and starts wondering how life would feel with you consistently there. That's not chemistry fading. That's attachment forming its roots. At this stage, something subtle but powerful begins to happen inside her. Her perception of you shifts from situational to symbolic. You're no longer just the man she's talking to. You become the man her mind references when she thinks about stability, understanding, and emotional alignment. This is where love quietly deepens, and it's also where many men unknowingly disrupt it. Here's the truth most men never hear. Once a woman emotionally invests, she becomes highly sensitive to incongruence. Not mistakes, misalignment. You can say the right things and still lose ground if your behavior contradicts the emotional safety you initially provided. If she shared something deeply personal and later feels she has to earn your attention, compete for your presence, or downplay her emotions to keep the connection smooth, her nervous system starts to retract. Not because she stopped caring, but because caring begins to feel costly. Women don't detach when they feel nothing. They detach when they feel too much without security. This is where ego gets in the way for many men. After sensing her attachment, they pull back to regain leverage. They delay responses intentionally. They test distance. They confuse emotional steadiness with complacency. But from her perspective, this doesn't read as strength. It reads as emotional inconsistency. Consistency is not boredom. Consistency is proof. When a woman has shared something meaningful, she has already placed you in a category that requires coherence. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be available at all times. But you do have to be emotionally honest, because emotional honesty is what keeps her regulated, and a regulated woman stays open. Another truth most men miss: love doesn't make women clingy, uncertainty does. When she feels secure, she becomes more feminine, more playful, more receptive. When she feels unsure, she becomes guarded, analytical, and distant. And men often misinterpret that distance as loss of interest, when it's actually a protective pause. From a psychological lens, this is attachment calibration. She's adjusting her emotional exposure based on the feedback she receives from you. If your presence feels stable, she opens more. If it feels unpredictable, she closes, not to punish, but to self-regulate. This is why emotionally mature men don't chase reassurance. They offer clarity, not through declarations, but through alignment. Their words and actions tell the same story. They don't disappear after depth. They don't escalate just to maintain intensity. They let connection breathe. And here's the part that challenges traditional dating advice. Once she's shared that vulnerable truth, attraction is no longer built through tactics. It's built through trust maintenance. You don't create love anymore. You protect the conditions that allow it to grow. Protection doesn't mean control. It means awareness. Awareness of how your silence lands. Awareness of how your tone shifts. Awareness of whether you're responding from presence or performance. Women are deeply intuitive at this stage. Not mystical, but neurological. The brain becomes highly attuned to emotional patterns once attachment begins. She will sense when you're authentic and when you're acting, and authenticity doesn't mean emotional dumping, it means congruence. If you can hold that congruence, something rare happens. She relaxes into you. She stops scanning for exits. She starts including you in her future language, not explicitly, but emotionally. And when a woman includes you emotionally, she's already chosen you internally. Most men think love is won through effort. In reality, it's sustained through steadiness. And steadiness isn't passive, it's disciplined presence. This is the difference between connections that burn bright and fade and bonds that deepen quietly and last. Here's the final truth, the one that most men only understand after they've lost someone who mattered. When a woman shares that deeply personal truth with you, she's not just revealing information, she's revealing direction. She's showing you where her heart is already moving. At that point, love doesn't need convincing, it needs containment. Containment is the ability to remain emotionally spacious without becoming distant, and emotionally close without becoming consuming. Very few men are taught this. Most swing between intensity and withdrawal, thinking one creates desire and the other creates respect. But love grows in the middle, where presence is steady and intention is clear without pressure. A woman who has fallen in love doesn't want to be chased. She wants to be met in emotional pace, met in depth, met in integrity. This is why the strongest move after she shares that truth is not to change anything dramatically. Don't rush labels. Don't suddenly become hyper-available. Don't lock the connection into a script. Let it unfold, but don't disappear from it. Stability is felt through continuity. From a psychological standpoint, this is when her attachment system is asking one final question. Can I relax here long term? Not, will he excite me? Not, will he fight for me? But, will my nervous system be at peace with him? Peace doesn't mean dull. Peace means safe enough to be fully alive. And here's the part men rarely hear from a woman, especially a psychologist. When you pass this stage, she doesn't fall harder. She falls deeper. Deeper means quieter, more grounded, less dramatic. And because it's less dramatic, men sometimes assume something is missing. Nothing is missing. Something real is forming. If you've ever wondered why a woman seemed to pull back right after things got meaningful, now you understand. It wasn't the depth that pushed her away. It was the lack of emotional containment afterward, the inconsistency, the shift in energy, the sense that the ground moved under her feet when she needed it to stay solid. Love doesn't need intensity to survive. It needs trust to breathe, and trust is built when your actions don't contradict the safety you once provided, when your presence doesn't disappear after vulnerability, when your interest doesn't turn into control, when your strength doesn't become emotional distance. If you can master this, you become rare, not because you manipulate attraction, but because you respect connection. You stop trying to get women to fall for you, and instead become the kind of man women feel safe falling with. Now I want to ask you something personal, something worth sitting with. When a woman in your past opened up to you about something real, did you respond with steadiness, or did you change? Be honest with yourself. And if you're willing, write your answer in the comments. That reflection alone can change how every future connection unfolds. If this video gave you clarity you didn't have before, like it. Subscribe if you want psychology that makes you stronger, not louder. And share this with one man who keeps losing connections he never understood. Some truths are learned late. The wise learn them now.